Transcending history and the world, a tale of souls and swords, eternally retold.
Soul Calibur on the Dreamcast was a smash hit that's been praised to death by just about everyone, myself included. But the initial low sales of its Japanese release caused Namco to pull out of developing big projects on the Dreamcast in favor of the hot new consoles like the PlayStation 2. There they saw success with Tekken Tag Tournament, as well as a confused with Tekken 4. So they decided it's been a few years since we got a Soul game, let's do another sequel on all three consoles this time. Soul Calibur 2 was released in arcades in August 2002, and a year later on the PlayStation 2, Nintendo GameCube, and Microsoft's Xbox. The big draw of this game was, depending on which version you got, there would be a corresponding guest character, a first for the series that would become the new standard moving forward. The PS2 had Heihachi Mishima from Tekken. That's cool, I guess. The Xbox had Spawn, which was neat despite not having a game on the Xbox at the time, but cool nonetheless. Then the GameCube had Link from The Legend of Zelda, arguably the best of the bunch. It was an incredibly bold move that mostly existed to push units, but it worked. Soul Calibur 2 is reviewed as one of the best fighting games of its console generation across all three platforms, with the GameCube version being slightly higher. Couldn't imagine why. But it still wasn't as favored as the last game was. I remember this being my very first Soul Calibur game when I was a kid. My friend let me borrow his copy of the GameCube port after telling him how big a Tekken fan I was, but not playing any of the Soul Calibur games at the time. Since then, I followed almost every release aside from Soul Calibur Legends on the Wii, and I still like to pop this one in every now and then. As of now, I own 2 of the 3 different versions of this game, with the Xbox One being the odd one out. Also, my Xbox is just a big paperweight anyway, so I couldn't boot it up even if I wanted to. Fortunately, I got the HD version of Soul Calibur 2 on the PlayStation 3 in 2014, and that gives you access to both Spawn and Heihachi, with no Link obviously. So for the sake of saving valuable hard drive space, I'll mainly focus on the GameCube version for this review and throw in footage from the HD version if need be. So without further ado, let's get back to the stage of history. Unless you're consulting the internet, the only way you'll be piecing together the story in Soul Calibur 2 is by beating the characters' arcade roots and unlocking their character biographies. This is how I'll be constructing this story synopsis because it's more fun that way. At the end of the last game, Nightmare used the power of Soul Edge to kill many people in Europe and devour their souls in hopes of bringing back his dead father. That is until a young warrior from the Ming Dynasty named Xianghua challenged the Azure Knight and awakened the Demon's Blade holy counterpart to defeat them. Afterwards, Siegfried, the knight possessed by Soul Edge, regains his sanity and laments the countless sins he's committed as Nightmare, and tries his best to distance himself and the sword from other people. Unfortunately, he's still cursed by the demonic blade and continuously fights against it for control of his body. After 4 years of rebellion, Soul Edge finally wins over and takes over Siegfried's body once again, transforming him into Nightmare. He once again plans to gather the broken shards of the other blade to regain his full strength. The reawakening of Soul Edge spurs those connected to it to challenge the Azure Knight for their own reasons. And that's more or less the setup for Soul Calibur 2. Aside from the console-exclusive guest characters, the roster across all 3 versions are the same. Many veterans from the last 2 entries return with updated designs and movesets. And the console releases also saw the return of Sophidia and Somina, who were absent from the arcade release. There's a handful of newbies to start with some hidden ones here and there, including Sophidia's younger sister Cassandra, Wang's replacement in Youngsung, the carefree wind girl named Talim, and a noble-turned pauper named Raphael, who may or may not be important later. There's also this weird monster created by Nightmare called Necrid, who speaks all of Mitsurugi's lines backwards. Basically, Todd McFarlane, the creator of Spawn, accepted his golden boy to appear in Soul Calibur 2, under the condition that he designed a new character for it. Now let's talk about those guest characters. We'll start with Spawn, the born-again demon slayer from the Dark and Gritty comic book series. I never read the comics or consumed any various media he's appeared in over the years, but I do at least know he can morph his cape into various weapons. In this game, however, it's primarily a hand axe, which is a little strange knowing how trigger-happy he can be, but I imagine they didn't want a beta version of Deathstroke from Injustice plaguing this game.
You've been to other dimensions.
Each has had its own injustices.
Maybe that's why my soul still burns.
Apparently, the Xbox representative was supposed to be from Team Ninja's Dead or Alive series, but licensing conflicts forced them to ask Uncle Todd for permission to use his character. Similarly, on the PS2 side, We were supposed to get Cloud Strife from Final Fantasy VII at first, but Squaresoft pulled out the last minute for unknown reasons,
I'm the plot king.
and Heihachi was thrown in at the 0 hour. So if it seems like he's incredibly out of place, that's because he is. Link, on the other hand, was a guest that obviously got the most love and attention out of everyone. His design is pulled straight out of Ocarina of Time, and most of his trademark weapons like bombs and arrows are incorporated into his moveset flawlessly. They even gave us a Soul Calibur style remix of the overworld theme. It's probably my favorite version of the main theme ever. The roster is fairly big with 15 starter characters and 8 unlockables, so there's a lot to try out from the get-go. And you'll have plenty of fun experimenting with the cast as the core game is as fun as it was before. Soul Calibur 2 follows the similar format as the last game. Vertical and horizontal attacks, a kick and a guard, throw commands, string combos, guard impacts, and guard parries, which I completely forgot to mention were introduced in the last game, but it works the same here, so I'll go over that real quick. Pressing forward and blocking time to your opponent's strike does an impact that gives you a chance to counter, but pressing back in guard puts them in a disadvantageous position. However, I was not aware you can impact throws. That seems unfair. You still have the soul charge. No, not you. Get that forbidden shit out of here. But you can cancel the animation and attack immediately after activation. You can even move during this. The combat is just as fast and frantic as it was before, and it all animates as smooth as butter the entire way through. The instant gratification of landing hits and blocking fatal blows still gets me even 3 games in. The returning cast see several updates to their movesets, and the newbies are all fun in their own right. The stages still have ring outs, but much like Tekken 4 before it, some of them have walls to knock your opponent into to deal extra damage. Fortunately, there's no ceilings or uneven terrain here, and you can tech away from the wall, so environmental hazards don't break the game in half here. There's a bunch of modes to cut your teeth in Soul Calibur 2, and most of them are unlocked from playing everything else. Arcade is about what you expect. You go through your character's ladder, fight your rival with much better cinematics than the last game, fight Inferno, and see their ending. As mentioned before, you don't really know the character's stake in this game until you clear their ladder and unlock their biography. And even then, you've already seen how it ends. You also have the time trial, team attack, survival, and practice mode working as they did before. However, there's also extra variants of all these new modes, where you can do all the things with special unlocked weapons with different stats and effects. A feature that was in Soul Blade, but omitted in Soul Calibur. And this is where the new Weapon Master mode comes in. And it's sort of an expansion from Mission Battle mode from the last game, with story elements of Edgemaster mode from Soul Blade. The plot concerns an up-and-coming warrior representing the player, going on a worldwide journey to seek out Soul Edge. There's a bit of extra lore here if you care to read through the tidal waves of text documents, such as the nature of the Holy Sword Soul Calibur. It was forged to destroy its demonic counterpart, but finding itself in the hands of greedy people tainted its power, leaving it in a corrupted state. Guardians of the Sword made 3 gates devoted to purifying it, but someone destroyed one of them in hopes to obtain it and conquer the world, much like Soul Edge wielders would. Weapon Master mode has you traveling a map with many different areas divided between each other, and they contain many different challenges to go through. Winning battle earns you gold and experience, and you level up your rank when you gather enough of it. The gold is used to purchase weapons and extra goodies from a store accessed through the world map. Beating specific missions is how you unlock the extra characters like Yoshimitsu and Sophitia, as well as most of the extra battle modes I mentioned earlier. You're free to play as anyone from the selectable cast to tackle whatever mission you feel are most necessary. And you can equip any unlocked weapons to make things easier. The challenges get significantly harder the further you delve in though, so I would advise managing your goal on one character's weapons first and foremost so you can try again at different angles. At the end, you fight Inferno again, who I neglected to mention that his battles are always a single rounder, but switches fighting styles when his health gets low enough. This fight is significantly more annoying than the last game, since he hits like a truck and takes less damage than normal. Plus, the sudden style change mid-battle can trip you up, but you eventually beat him and the corrupted Soul Calibur comes out of his back. That probably plays into the next game, so I think I'll leave it at that. Graphically, Soul Calibur 2 is a big step up from the last game thanks to higher processors compared to the Dreamcast. The GameCube version runs silky smooth at all intervals, though it can be a hurdle to acclimate to the weird button layout. I assume the PS2 and Xbox are comparable as well, though I can confirm the HD port on the PS3 still retains a consistent frame rate while looking a bit cleaner. The sound design is on point as always, with all the sound effects hitting their mark, and the music is another glow up for the series. A full-on orchestral score using more conventional instruments and catchy rhythms to go with them. No joke, Confrontation is one of my favorite tracks in the series, and it always fills me with vim and vigor when you fight in the Coliseum stage. This is the second game in the series besides Soul Blade to feature an English voice cast, and I have a bit of a soft spot for it here. All these characters say some weird stuff sometimes, and the often hokey delivery makes it all the more memorable. Hell, before a match starts, you can press a button to make your character say one of 4 lines.
Versus Nightmare.
Overall, Soul Calibur 2 is still fun to play, and it's about the same level as the last game personally. The tweaks to the gameplay, updated graphics and sound, the return of the changeable weapons, the new cast of characters, and even the 3 guests make it a slightly better experience. It was actually a blessing in disguise that this game was available to a much wider audience than the last one, and no matter which version you choose, you're bound to have a fun time alone or with friends. You'd think this would be the formula Namco and Project Soul would follow for the next game, but this is where things start to get a little weird. Tune in next time as we dive into the 4th entry of the legendary weapon fighter, Soul Calibur 3. Until then, thank you all for watching, and have an awesome day.
You
I'd
win.
love to show this to that idiot son of mine.